really, really well there.
Yeah, exactly. I remember yesterday Rayquaza just kept coming onto the field and being removed very quickly by a powerful Moonblast from that Tapu Lele. You know, Rayquaza is a Pokemon we've talked a lot about already, but one of its big weaknesses is that Fairy typing. Being a flying type, when it gets the Delta Stream activated, it can have reduced damage from the attacks that affect that side of it, but its other typing, the Dragon type, will still be vulnerable to that Fairy type of moves on that side of the field. But here we can see a little bit of the record from Jean-Paul Lopez.
Oh, he has been doing really well lately. Like top 32 at Worlds, top 4 at North American Internationals. He won a special event in Lima and top 8 at the Latin American International last year.
Exactly, coming off a top 8 finish last year, top 8 again here.
Yeah.
He's going to be wanting to take it through to top 4. You want to always keep advancing, making progress, adding more accolades and things to your trophy cabinet. So being able to advance forward to top 4 would be such an achievement for him. And he is rocking that Rayquaza Xerneas call that we've just touched on about how they have such a great partnership. So if I was him, I'd want to make sure that I'm keeping that balance strong, making sure my restricted stay safe and preserved for the moment when you can unleash them and start dealing through that damage.
I think he has to position them like really well. Like he maybe wants to bait that Tapu Lele into locking himself into Moonblast or something, because he got way more to switch into Moonblast than he has to for switching into Psychic and getting rid of it as soon as possible. But I think it's going to be hard, but he is a really good player. We've seen that on the accomplishments. I think he got a really good plan to face James Bake from the US.
And he does have that Incineroar as well, a Pokemon that can jump in and take any of those Psychic type attacks to no damage at all thanks to his Dark typing. And again, Incineroar is the Pokemon that you do have to preserve really well. No Incineroar for James though. He's opted for, we've already talked about, the slightly quirkier team, and his Intimidate user is going to be that Salamence. And you can see his accolades there. Top 4 Worlds, most recently in Washington DC in the same year as well. He was the finalist here last year. Top 8 Oceania International Championships and top 16 the North American International Championship. So he's going to be wanting to take this all the way. Wants to not just be a finalist, wants to be the winner.
Yeah, he desperately wants to be that winner. I'm really curious if it works out that way. But if we look at his team, it's like really, it looks really aggressive. He can start the aggressive way, baiting Jean-Paul into like some early knockouts, and then he's still got maybe the Stakataka and the Groudon in the back. Especially that Stakataka got a really good matchup as well against both Xerneas and Rayquaza.
Exactly, and I think as well you touched on Groudon there, Sebi. That's a Pokemon that can go right through a lot of Jean-Paul's team. You know, the Tapu Koko, Gengar, Incineroar, even the Xerneas and Amoonguss aren't going to want to take a huge Precipice Blades, but Team Preview is ready and waiting. These players are going to jump straight into their games. Notes are being taken already. And as you can see there, for a quick recap, on the left-hand side, you've got Amoonguss, Incineroar, Tapu Koko, Gengar, Rayquaza, and Xerneas. Where on James's side, you've got that Selgor, Tapu Lele, Dawn Wings, Necrozma, Groudon, Salamence, and Stakataka.
Oh yeah, this is going to be really tough. I see the better matchup is really for James. I think he got the upper hand matchup-wise, but you never know how you play. I'm pretty sure Jean-Paul got his plan to combat James now.
Yeah, it's going to come down to a lot of positioning here as well. Jean-Paul, as we said, needs to make sure that he preserves his Pokemon and that he doesn't allow them to be picked up by an easy KO. You know, leaving it maybe vulnerable and not protecting when he should means that, you know, you could easily lose your Gengar or Incineroar to something like a Precipice Blades, or even something fast and speedy from that Tapu Lele. You need to make sure that you're calling the protects right and doing the defensive plays at the right time as well, and outsmarting James a little bit. But to no surprise, James is leading with that Dawn Wings Necrozma and the Tapu Lele, where Jean-Paul has gone for Incineroar and Xerneas. Quite a classic combination from him there.
Oh, that's really cool. I really like the Incineroar Xerneas lead, and I really do like the Necrozma and Tapu Lele lead from James as well. This might already start being the baiting game, for example. Like, he sends an Incineroar knowing that he cannot fake out any of the Pokemon. But if there's a Tapu Koko in the back, you can switch that in to set up the electric terrain, being able to fake out and preventing some shenanigans from Tapu Lele going on. But on the other hand, if you do that, like that, Tapu Koko is kind of open to attacks if James straight away starts attacking strongly. And we do see that all Pokemon stay on the field.
Yes.
and start attacking right away.
Yep, Ultra Burst going to be the first move of action in this top 8 game as Ultra Necrozma joins the field and wisely protects, able to sort of preserve its Z move going forward because it cannot Ultra Burst and go for it in the same turn. Tapu Lele, that Choice Scarf, very, very speedy going for that Magic Room. So now Xerneas is going to be unable to get that turn 1 Geomancy if that's what it logged into, but instead going to be the Moonblast going straight into Tapu Lele, going to deal a good chunk of damage, taking it below 50% as Incineroar decides to get on out of there, doesn't want to be affected by that Psychic Terrain affecting its Fake Out in the back for later when maybe it's left the field.
That was a really, really good play by Jean-Paul Lopez. Like, he knew what James is going for, and the switch in from Tapu Koko again is another really good play. Tapu Koko is now probably the fastest Pokemon on the field, so he can starting Dazzling Gleaming stuff, so pick up that early KO on Tapu Lele. And Xerneas, if we look at the HP stat, is kind of bulky and can start attacking into the Necrozma slot. So Jean-Paul really got it right in the first turn.
Yeah, I think you're right there. The Tapu Koko bringing the electric terrain to the field as well will weaken the damage that Necrozma and Tapu Lele can deal with their Psychic type moves. And Tapu Lele, knowing that it could fall victim to a Dazzling Gleam, picking up the little KO there, leaves the field. It could bring Psychic terrain back maybe when Incineroar rejoins the field, but for now, Groudon's going to take its place, bringing the Sunshine to the field, but most critically applying some pressure with those Precipice Blades.
Oh yeah, again a really nice play by James. He's preserving the Tapu Lele for later on. He needs a faster Pokemon to either set up Magic Room again or just start firing off strong Psychic attacks once that Incineroar is gone. And we see Jean-Paul Lopez starting attacking.
Yeah, that Dazzling Gleam would have picked up the KO against that Tapu Lele and does a huge amount of damage to that Necrozma, but it's going to have to take an Earth Power in return. It does pick up the KO thanks to that Neuroforce ability on that Ultra Necrozma, dealing extra damage on super effective moves. Xerneas as well follows up with another Dazzling Gleam, and seeing the damage that Tapu Koko's one did to that Necrozma, a second one following up will be able to pick up the KO. So Jean-Paul able to remove from the field nice and quickly that big powerhouse of the Ultra Necrozma. But the one thing I love about Groudon as well, it's such a good pairing of a Pokemon to have in a Magic Room environment. Because of the orb, it's not affected by that sort of distorted room. It's able to still go into its primal form.
Oh yeah, I really like how James didn't went for the C move with his Ultra Necrozma, because he knows I can remove the Xerneas later on with my Groudon. Groudon got the upper hand in the matchup if he plays it right, and now he sends in the Salamence to intimidate the Rayquaza, and he still got the Tapu Lele in the back to avoid like extreme speeds and stuff. Really well played for both players. And
exactly, Intimidate as well, going off onto that Rayquaza. Rayquaza kind of going, no, I do not want my attack stack lowered, thank you. I'm going to jump back out and Intimidate in return. And I think this is a good play here from Jean-Paul, just because, yes, you are going to maybe fall victim to something like a Precipice Blades, but getting the damage off, sort of the reducement of the damage, as it were, on the Groudon and the Salamence could be critical going forward. Salamence, though, going to hit that Mega Stone and evolve into Mega Salamence, get the Aerialate ability, able to hit with those flying type moves.
Oh yeah, and to stress out why the Tapu Lele is still preserved, he wants to not switch it in and getting chipped off the field, so he preserves it until like the late game, I guess, which is a really nice play. And another really nice play is the Tailwind from Salamence coming.
Yeah, exactly, Tailwind going to boost up the speed on that side of the field. Xerneas still going for the Moonblast here, targeting into that Salamence. Does a huge amount of damage, picks up the KO and removes it from the field, but I feel like Salamence getting the Tailwind up is going to really help him out, having Groudon on the field. Of course, Xerneas has not been able to click that Geomancy button thanks to the Magic Room environment, so it doesn't have the speed that it would really normally want when facing down against Pokemon like a Choice Scarf, Tapu Lele, and that Groudon as well.
Oh yeah, now we see the end game coming. Like Groudon is now under Tailwind. If I recommend correctly, this might have been a special variant. I don't know yet. It was a Sword Dance one. It was a Sword Dance one. Never mind. Tapu Lele is now in and the fastest Pokemon on the field, and it starts straight away attacking and chipping both Xerneas and Incineroar.
Oh, Xerneas able to jump out of the way of that Precipice Blades, as it does connect onto the Incineroar, though, thanks to the chip as well from that Dazzling Gleam. Doesn't matter about any Intimidates, Incineroar will be returning right back into his Pokeball as quickly as it joined the field. Xerneas able to go for another Dazzling Gleam, but thanks to Groudon's typing, is going to be able to take this really well. It's not very effective, and, you know, anything like a Fire Punch or something should in the sun be able to deal a huge amount of damage to Xerneas. Even something like a Moonblast going into the Groudon at this range wouldn't be dealing too much damage, and of course, There's
yeah.
Rayquaza on
We
the
still
field.
got Rayquaza in the back, and as we've said at the beginning, like Rayquaza, when paired with Xerneas, is usually a really offensive one with Earth Power, unless this Groudon got something like a Dragon Claw, which I doubt because we've already seen Sword Dance on stream. Yeah, there we see the forfeit. Jean-Paul played it really, really clever. He really positioned himself really well. Like James tried to do. He wanted to get the early knockouts, but I think he got the wrong ones, and this is what makes such aggressive teams really hard to play. If you pick the wrong KOs, you suddenly on the back foot.
Yes, and he did the exact right thing. He kept that Rayquaza in the back. We saw it jump into the field, take an Intimidate, and shoot right back to the Pokeball. And having it in there at the end really, really helped out that Xerneas that would have been in a bit of a tricky spot against that Groudon. But thanks to the Rayquaza still being in the back, it's going to be able to easily have picked up the KO there. You can see James has already locked in his team. He knows what he wants to do going into this game too. And I wonder what adjustments he will make. He may just stick with the same Pokemon but change up the way he used them, making sure that he can control the board advantage a little bit better. And maybe, like you said, Sebi, pick up the more crucial KOs at the better points during the game.
He can. I think he can either try to be even more aggressive with Excelgor coming in as well, pair with Tapu Lele, because even if there is a Tapu Koko come in, the Psychic Seed activates anyhow, no matter what. But on the other hand, we see Tapu Lele and Groudon for James joining the field.
Yeah, it's going to be the Incineroar and Xerneas on Jean-Paul's side of the field, sticking with what he knows here. Of course, the Intimidate from that Incineroar really going to help out against that Groudon, but Groudon's still going to apply a lot of pressure with Precipice Blades against both of these Pokemon, even with the Intimidate, will still deal a big chunk of damage. But Tapu Lele, once again, is the Pokemon of the hour here. It can go for a Magic Room really freely and still sort of work against the Xerneas Power Herb and the item on the Incineroar as well. So it might be a situation, like you were saying earlier, where Tapu Koko could join in.
Yeah, this is like one of those crucial turns already where loads of prediction is coming. Like, is James again going for the Magic Room? Is Jean-Paul respecting him to go for Magic Room and starting attacking right away? Or is he going for a Geomancy maybe? That's really hard, but we see Incineroar switching out in favor for Rayquaza coming in.
Yeah, Rayquaza going to join the field here, going to bring the Airlock and stop those Fire-type moves from having any extra power. And Tapu Lele not going for Magic and going for a Moonblast. Does he call the Rayquaza switching in? No, going into the Xerneas instead. Going to do a good chunk of damage though, thanks to the Fairy or boosting Fairy type moves, as Xerneas does go for the Geomancy.
Oh yeah, what a turn, what a turn. Sean Lopez got his Geomancy up in turn 1. I wonder if that Groudon is able to KO the Xerneas now.
Xerneas is going to have to jump out of the way, but instead, Groudon just going straight for the Swords Dance. I like the Rayquaza switching from Jean-Paul as well, in case that was the Precipice Blades. Obviously, Flying type, not going to have to worry about those at all. But Xerneas, I think, getting away here, able to get that Geomancy up strong.
Yeah, James didn't expect Jean-Paul to go for Geomancy at all.
No.
But Jean-Paul really did the right call and suddenly has an amazing ball position. That Xerneas threatens the Tapu Lele with a knockout, not being able to protect. Rayquaza is threatening the Groudon on the other hand. That's a really strong position for Jean-Paul now at the moment.
And that Rayquaza as well, getting in unintimidated, going to go up into its Mega Evolved form. Going to be threatening a huge amount of damage with something like a Dragon Ascent. Of course, Tapu Lele, though, going to still threaten with something like a Moonblast. But Xerneas, thanks to Geomancy, able to outspeed. And going into that Tapu Lele, wants to remove it from the field before it's able to remove the Rayquaza in return. That's exactly what Xerneas is able to do.
And if the Rayquaza has Earth Power, yeah, there we go. Equipped with the Life Orb. Is it going? No, not enough. That's a bulky one.
Yeah, not quite picking up the KO against the Groudon, which is going to go for the Fire Punch into that Xerneas. Is it enough with a reduced health? Yes, it is, to remove Xerneas from the field. So Rayquaza not able to pick up the KO against that Xerneas. You're quite right, Sebi. Very bulky Groudon.
Yeah, and we still got the Psychic Terrain on the field. So even if Incineroar comes... No! There we go. Tapu Koko joining the field.
Yeah, Tapu Koko going to come back to the field. Of course, it has to worry a little bit about the Groudon on the other side, but most crucially, it's going to negate the Psychic Terrain, overrule it with the Electric Surge, and then able to apply pressure with something like a Dazzling Gleam against Necrozma when it goes up into its Ultra form. But I think most critically at this stage, going to stop the Psychic-type attacks on the Ultra Necrozma from dealing as much damage as it would have done previously.
Yeah, and somehow I suddenly really like the position James is in. That Ultra Necrozma threatens the Rayquaza, which is not bulky at all, with a knockout. So does Groudon threaten Tapu Koko, because if it doesn't have the Fairy MC, it cannot knock out the Groudon with a Dazzling Gleam, for example. As we've seen, it's really, really bulky. I think it worked out pretty well. Like, we have seen James having long-term plans in the end, and there we see the Salamence coming in now for James.
Yeah, Salamence jumping in here. This could be quite risky if that Tapu Koko has gone for something like a Dazzling Gleam. But most likely, if that is going to be an Ultra Bursting Necrozma, then it's going to be likely protecting. Instead, Rayquaza just going straight for the Extreme Speed with the Life Orb. Does a huge amount of damage to Salamence, was trying to get the KO on that Groudon. As Tapu Koko does indeed go for that Dazzling Gleam. Catches Salamence on the switch in, but it just manages to survive. And Necrozma wisely not going into his Ultra form, which would have gained it the Dragon type ability. And instead, it's going to be Tapu Koko KO to that Earth Power.
Yeah, James is identifying that Tapu Koko as a threat to Salamence, because that Salamence on the field now is usually a threat for the Rayquaza, because it threatens both Pokemon. Necrozma can still go into Ultra form later on, being naturally faster than Mega Rayquaza, threatening the Mega Rayquaza as well. And if James preserves the Groudon can take care of Incineroar, especially when not intimidated, when it comes in freshly. So James is really planning it out for the end. And Jean-Paul is fighting to avoid that endgame playing from James.
Exactly. I think you're right here. Necrozma's in a great position where it could get that Ultra Burst up. It doesn't have to worry about the Fairy types of Xerneas and Tapu Koko anymore with those Dazzling Gleams or Moonblast, and it's able to apply a lot of pressure with something like the Earth Power into that Incineroar. You know, using Neuroforce, getting an extra 25% damage on super effective moves. Earth Power would be dealing a lot to that opposing Incineroar. That's exactly what we're seeing here. Ultra Bursting into the sky is that Necrozma.
Yeah, I really like that mind games, like no fake out coming in, not playing any mind games, and Photon Geyser is not enough to take that Rayquaza out, but Double Edge will surely be.
Yeah, follows up and doubles into that Rayquaza. Able to pick up the KO nice and cleanly. Salamence will, however, be KO'd with Recoil. And it's up to whether this Incineroar has got anything it can use against that Necrozma. And even if it did, that Snarl has avoided. So Necrozma looking in a really great position here to go for something like an Earth Power. But it also has its buddy Groudon with those Precipice Blades. And poor Incineroar here, looking a little bit lost.
Yeah. That was like a really mind-gamey situation where you can obviously use Fake Out into the Necrozma slot, but what happens if it doesn't go into Ultra form? You can go for the Extreme Speed into the Salamence slot, but on the other hand, you can just wait for itself to take it out. So that was like a really mind-gaming situation, and James planned it out. So we even now.
Yeah, exactly. A game 3 in top 8, always very exciting with this high-level play. You want to see as much of it as possible. And one thing I loved as well is going into that game 2, James picked his Pokemon so quickly. He knew exactly what adjustment he needed to make. And in that game 2, he was so dominant, picking up strong KOs, making sure he had the Pokemon preserved that he needed to keep for the end game, and was just able to really utilize that going forward. Game 3, of course, is a very different situation. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, where what do? Do you go for the strategy that won you your game? Do you go for something completely different? And then you have to play against the mind of the opposing player as well and try and predict what they're going to do.
That's always a hard decision. Like there are several player types out there who really stick with what worked for them. But on the other hand, like we see, you sometimes switch things up. That's a mind game by itself. But if one plan works, like Groudon being the end game sweeper there, he might stick with that and see where things go. But we do see the leads already.
Ooh. back to game one kind of situation
Yes.
here with the Xerneas and the Incineroar for John Paul. James going for that psychic combo of the Dual Wings Necrozma and the Tapu Lele. So
Yeah.
this caused him a little bit of trouble in game one. Obviously, John Paul was able to play around it, but it's a different game, and using that experience that these players have got, they will be able to make the adjustments and see how they can win out this game. But I remember previously this Incineroar, it stayed on the field for a little bit, but it then had to switch out because it had a little bit of trouble, obviously, with fake out and things like that. Do we think it's going to stay on the field again, or can you imagine John Paul maybe switching out nice and quickly?
Well, we have seen Jean Paul using Snarl in the last game, so this might be an option to reduce the attacking power from Necrozma and Tapu Lele. And now James has decided to not start attacking right away with the Tapu Lele. And Jean Paul again gets the call on what James is doing and starts attacking right away.
Exactly, going for a Moonblast into that Tapu Lele that's gone for more tricks with Magic Group. Xerneas, however, in the Psychic Drain is going to have to take a huge Photon Geyser, and Incineroar, it does want to get on out of there, but instead of doing a hard switch, gets a little bit of extra damage on that Tapu Lele, puts it into a strong kind of Dazzling Gleam range from that opposing Xerneas, and will return to the Pokeball, leaving John Paul free to bring in another Pokemon that can apply a lot more pressure to this game. Tapu Koko, a great option here, negating that terrain, and again able to pressure with something like a Dazzling Gleam.
Yeah. I wonder that like I think James is pretty happy about that Incineroar U-turning out. Like Incineroar is not a Pokemon that prevents his end game plan. Like if again Groudon wants to sweep in the end, Incineroar is something that he doesn't care about because it gets taken out anyhow. And we do see again a clever switch to capitalize on the two fairy types on the field.
Exactly, and of course the electric type moves from that Tapu Koko won't have any effect on Groudon. I think you're quite right, he's got so many different ways to take down that Incineroar. It's not going to be his most pressing opponent in this moment. You want to get rid of that Xerneas before maybe Magic Room expires, and even outside of Geomancer, you can see how much damage those Moonblasts were doing to the Tapu Lele, and of course if Necrozma does want to go into its Ultra form, it's going to be weak to those as well. But instead, just going for a Protect as Tapu Koko goes for the Electrium Z.
Oh, this is... Is it going to be a catch?
Or going into most likely the Protect there. Tapu Lele only had a little bit of health left, so you wouldn't have probably wanted to waste your Z-move on it unless you were maybe thinking Salamence would come in. But I think going into that Necrozma there, thanks to the Protect, it's not going to be dealing as much damage. In fact, only a little bit, but was hopefully going to try and get a big, strong bit of damage off. Instead, Xerneas and the Dazzling Gleam, obviously the damage on the Necrozma is going to be null and void, and on Groudon just a tiny bit of chip. So some really fantastic defensive play there from James, and now he looks so strong with that Groudon on the field. Yeah,
I think it's like we have mentioned before, it's a really hot matchup for Jean Paul. He desperately wants to have Rayquaza to take care of that Groudon because Xerneas obviously does too few of damage, and James knows that. That's why the Tapu Lele went out again. It's a Choice Scarf Pokemon. In the end game, it can fire off like strong Moonblast, being faster than Rayquaza and not caring about extreme speed thanks to its psychic terrain. And this might be crucial how both players adapt to that plan. Pretty sure both players know about what they want to do.
Exactly, and that Necrozma wants to jump up and Ultra Burst. Not going for a Protect as a Protected the last turn. Is going to have to take this Volt Switch from the Tapu Koko. Takes it very easily thanks to it being resisted, as Tapu Koko is able to jump back to Jean Paul, allowing him to bring out another Pokemon. Bringing in the Incineroar as well, I think, was good. Obviously, getting off that Intimidate. You can now apply some pressure with Fake Out, but of course, you do still have to worry about James's Lele in the back. You don't want that switching in for that Necrozma as you go for a Fake Out and then taking a Precipice Blades in return.
I really do like that Jean Paul now preserves the Tapu Koko better, so he can switch it in later on to pick the KO from Extreme Speed onto Tapu Lele. If he resets the terrain, I really do like how James capitalized on that switch as well. That Sword Dance once again was really, really amazing. Even Fire Punch into a Rayquaza is going to do a huge amount of damage once boosted, so he saw that coming and capitalized on the preserved Tapu Koko really well.
Yes, exactly. Also allows him to work around that Intimidate, so he's still at +1 attack. So powerful for a Groudon. That Tapu Lele is jumping back into the fray. Going to stop a Fake Out coming out if that's been what Incineroar's gone for. But thanks to the Protect on Rayquaza, I feel like Incineroar's going to be going a little bit more offensive. Groudon going for the Precipice Blades, though, at +1. Incineroar needs to jump out of the way, but it doesn't. It connects.
It connects, and it is going to take out that Incineroar in just one hit. So this is once again, really cleverly played, because now Jean-Paul lost his Incineroar. He's now urged to either send in the Xerneas, which is pressured, or go for the Tapu Koko, which lets him set up the electric terrain. But now James can preserve the psychic terrain once again by switching out the Tapu Lele.
Exactly, you can just switch your Tapu Lele back out, and the one thing I love as well is that Tapu Lele, he's kind of keeping it, if he does switch it back out, he can keep it to bring it back in later to get that Magic Room off again, because it will still have its Choice Scarf intact. Of course, in this environment at the moment, the Tapu Koko can still apply some pressure to Tapu Lele, but first of all, Rayquaza are going to go and Mega Evolve as well, bring the Delta Stream to the field, and can apply some big pressure with something like that Earth Power against that Groudon. We know it won't pick up the KO, but if potentially Tapu Koko is able to get a tiny bit more chip with the Dazzling Gleam, it can help it out later on. Tapu Lele sitting there like a little bit of a sitting duck there, going to be hit by the Dazzling Gleam, picks up the KO. Maybe James predicted that Tapu Koko would switch out or something. I don't know, but it's going to be the Earth Power coming out from Rayquaza. Groudon really able to take that like a champ, and going for that Fire Punch. It's still +1.
It's still +1, and he wanted to take out that Tapu Koko as soon as possible. His Groudon is still on the field. Now he can send in his Necrozma, and he still got one more Pokemon. Necrozma obviously is faster than both Rayquaza and Xerneas, and threatens both for a big KO, either with a C move or just a straight move into the really hard chipped Xerneas. So I really do like the position James played himself in by letting Tapu Lele go down and having a free switch into that Necrozma.
Yeah, exactly. That free switch was actually really beneficial for him. But the thing I love the most is looking back at the beginning of the game, he foresaw that he needed to get the Xerneas whittled down to low HP so that when Magic Rooms expired, there's no point really going for Geomancy when you're facing down against your two restricted of Groudon and Necrozma, because either of those Pokemon can easily pick up a KO with something like a Fire Punch, or even Photon Geyser is going to deal a huge amount of damage. So Xerneas here protecting is kind of being locked down by James's strategy, and it looks like the Z move's coming out from that Ultra Necrozma.
Oh yeah. Did you see a Protect from Rayquaza, Lou?
No, I did not. Gonna be so powerful. The Z-move animation is something we've really been able to showcase and capitalize on here in the Ultra Series format, particularly when we jumped into the format originally. This was kind of the talk of the town. Everyone was talking about Ultra Necrozma and the light that burns the sky. The Z-move exclusive to it, so powerful. Yes, it's not in its dominant terrain, but thanks to it being the Z-move, it's going to be so powerful. And you're quite right, Sebi. If you're James, you need to get rid of that Rayquaza as quickly as possible.
Yes, and this is probably what is going to happen. I really doubt that Life Orb Rayquaza with the most powerful attack we got at the moment. This might already be it with...
One-hit knockout just shows the vast power of that Z-move. Rayquaza does leave the field, leaving Xerneas alone to fight it out against both of the restricted tier on James's side. Fire Punch going to go into that Protect, but Xerneas being unboosted just doesn't have what it needs to be able to take down both of these Pokemon.
Yeah, there we see. Oh, really well planned. I didn't see all of that coming, but that's why James is doing so well at so many tournaments.
Exactly.
He's really good at how to plan the end games out, and I really love seeing and following that throughout a game, because you oftentimes don't see it coming. That's why he wins against opponents if they saw it coming. But really cleverly planned by James, and really well played by Jean-Paul as well.
Yes, an incredible best-of-3 set there, and it does just go to show as well, James has really called it perfectly going into this tournament with the meta. Magic Room Tapu Lele proving to be vital in enabling him to go through the strategies that he needs to pick up some clean KOs and stop the strategies of your opponent. You know, one of the biggest things you do in team building is thinking about what item you're going to put on your Pokemon and how it's going to help you. We see it time and time again that maybe one thing that you're weak to, that item, as opposed to the Pokemon, can really help you out. Something like a red card to get rid of Xerneas or something like that. And actually having those all negated really puts you on the back foot, and if that's something you haven't prepared for, then you're going to have to be thinking on the spot as quickly as possible. And Jean-Paul did such a good job at the beginning, able to make sure that he positioned himself well. He preserved that Rayquaza so expertly in game 1, so that at the end he knew that he had it there to sweep through the rest of James's team. But James took that information, said, okay, this is how you're going to play it. These are my adaptations.
Yeah. really cleverly planned. Like, to be fair, I really think James had a really good matchup.
Really strong. We talked about that at the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah, we talked about that, and I really like how he is bringing that Tabalelli with Magic Room and the Excelgor, because like in the middle of the season, people thought it was like more or less gimmicky, but now